Ukraine. I've done an animated map for you, and I've done a whole bunch of research. All gets very interesting. So let's start with the map, and then we'll go down to some of the other facts that I found out. This is the Russian army. Okay, as you can see, what I've done is I've thought through sites, and I've found different numbers. So depending on who you listen to, you will get conflicting numbers. So what I've tried to do is I've split the numbers into two. I've split the numbers into total troops. That's including all reservists, every possible man kind of fighting age. So this is the total troops that a country will have. And I've split it into active troops. So here you can see that Russia is 3.3 million troops in total, but only has an active force of 845,000. So currently, because we're talking about Ukraine, they currently have 70,000 troops patrolling the border. Ukraine itself, they currently have 1.2 million troops, as you can see here, including reservists, and only 250,000 active troops in their country. Then the lower half of Ukraine is shaded a different color here, are actually pro-Russian people. These dark red areas here are ones that are actually physically fighting the Ukrainians. They've broken away. But you'll probably find that all these areas in Ukraine would actually love to just be part of Russia. They're very pro-Russian, these areas. Then, if we just zoom out here, so all these red soldiers here in aeroplanes and tanks, whatever, are Russian. Okay, so it's 210 aircraft, 880 tanks. This bottom part here is Crimea, and here you can see 25,000 Russian troops currently occupying it. The reason why they took Crimea, by the way, is because the Russians had a 20-year lease on it, and then when all the unrest broke out, which I'll get into in a minute, they didn't want to lose their 20-year lease, and it also has a huge strategic importance to them, so they went in and they occupied Crimea. I mean, obviously they paid for it, so yeah. This is Moldova, and here you can see they've got 5,350 active troops. They could probably muster about 6,750 troops in total. So Russian-based. Okay, so in Crimea, there was a Muslim uprising, and it's amazing how the West always use proxies and hide behind different type of proxy armies. I mean, this may have been the West, it may not have been the West, but we kind of see this kind of tactic used time and time again, especially in the Middle East. But anyway, so these Muslim protesters were protesting in Crimea. How did Putin respond? Putin responded by putting 150,000 Russians on standby in Crimea. So let's just cross to Poland. So Poland currently have 99,300 active troops. In total with reservists, you're looking at 172,700 troops. Okay, they colored in blue because they pro-Nato, a part of the West. Here's another one, Belarus. So Belarus, this is an interesting one when I looked at it. Again, they seem to be pro-NATO, but I don't know if they're totally convinced of it. because they say that a third of the country's pro-NATO, pro the West, okay, a third of the country's pro-Russian, and a third is undecided. So, but my gut tells me that although they seem to be leaning towards the West, I think their true roots and their true feelings would be with Russia. They're not letting on. Now let's delve down the rabbit hole. The language. So the blue shading is mostly Ukrainian spoken people. The pink, both Ukrainian and Russian spoken people. And then the red is mostly Russian spoken. Okay. So this is the West's take on the story. Why has the crisis erupted in Ukraine? The ousting of pro-Moscow President Viktor Yanukovych by the demonstrators backing closer ties with the European Union in the midst of the Sochi Winter Olympics was always going to be a challenge for Vladimir Putin. And then they always use the straw card. The Russian president, who once described the breakup of the Soviet Union as the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the century, is determined to prevent such a strategically important neighbor slipping further from Moscow's orbit and into the arms of the West. Okay, they always bring up, the Soviet Union, but is part of the reason, but not the entire truth. So let's delve deeper. So there's a site called stopfake.org. Okay, so what they do is they look at the latest headlines, and they say, we will tell you the truth. Come to our fake site and we will tell you all the fake stories and we'll tell you the right truth and what to believe, We'll help you make sense of it all, We like the debunkers, Anyway, so what happened is America's been giving $5 billion to the Ukraine since its independence. People have been saying, well, this $5 billion was used to actually start the coup in Ukraine, and America actually paid to stoke the coup. And these guys are saying, no, it's all fake. Don't worry. The USA didn't give $5 billion, to stoke up the coup. That's all just fake. And I'll show you what the guy says here, or what the site says here. Victoria Newland, what she meant, okay? Since Ukrainian independence in 1991, the United States has supported Ukrainians to build democratic skills. Democratic skills, that is an interesting concept. And institutions, okay? And it goes on by saying how they've promoted, good governance, we have invested in over $5 billion to assist Ukraine in these goals that will ensure a secure and prosperous democratic future. Nicely worded. Yeah, they've been helping out in programs, technical, cultural, humanitarian, and economic. They also help develop agricultural, democratic, and human rights institutions. Like, that's what you need. When you break away from Russia and you become an independent, what you need is, institutions, more institutions, human rights. You've got to get human rights. Don't worry about anything else, I mean, Ukraine is known for its breadbasket and gas pipelines, which we'll get into next. Yeah, but America's just good, just helping people, pull them out of the slums. What's that? Oh, Zimbabwe. Who's Zimbabwe? Oh, never mind them. Let's stick with Ukraine. Yeah, okay. So, anyway. So what is it about? Ukraine crisis is about great power, oil, gas, pipeline rivalry. Russia's armed intervention in Crimea absolutely illustrates President Putin's ruthless determination to get his way in Ukraine, but less attention has been paid to the role of the United States in interfering in Ukraine politics and civil society. Both powers are motivated by the desire to ensure that a geostrategically pivotal country with respect to control of critical energy pipeline routes remains in their own sphere of influence. There was a recording, a telephone conversation between the U.S. Assistant Secretary of State Victoria Nuland and the U.S. Ambassador here, Jeffrey Pratt. So, and what happened was, in the conversation, she actually said, F the EU. And everyone was like, oh, jeez. But anyway, everyone was focusing on the swear word, and not actually paying attention to what's actually going on. And I love the way this article phrases it. It says, whilst the focus has been on Newland's rude language, which has allegedly elicited US apologies, the more important context of this language concerns the US role in liaising with Ukrainian opposition parties with a view, it seems, to manipulate the orientation of the Ukrainian government in accordance with US interests. And that's it. The US has been involved in manipulating and pulling the strings in this whole Ukraine crisis, and it has escalated way out of control. And it says here, rather than leaving the future of Ukrainian politics up to the Ukrainian people, as claimed in official announcements, the conversation suggests active US government interference to favor certain opposition leaders. This is from InfoWars. Joe Biden's son was appointed to the board of Ukrainian's largest gas producer. And it goes on to say the global elites do not disguise efforts to gobble up Ukraine's natural resources. So what's happening? I'll show you another site, BBC. Look at these guys. Vice President Joe Biden's son joins Ukrainian gas company. There he is. Look how they're laughing, eh? So the Americans are not only interfering in Ukraine, spending a whole lot of money on, human rights, guys, human rights, never mind the food in your stomach, human rights. Let's spend the money there. Yeah, right, okay. You guys got to remember one thing, okay? When you have long protests like this, they're happening in Ukraine and elsewhere, as a matter of fact, the people need to eat, the people need to work, but if they're not working because they're so busy with the protests, okay, someone has to pay them to be there. They won't just sit around there unless they're getting paid, unless they can take care of their families, So every major protest that's pretty lengthy, someone's paying to have them there. Where's this money coming from? Where is it coming from? So look at these guys, okay? So they not only interfere in Ukraine, they hand out special roles and businesses and, slice up the country. So that was on BBC. And, of course, what BBC was saying here, that, this guy, Vice President Joe Biden says that he has no involvement with his son's Hunter's new Ukrainian employer. Yeah, he was employed because he's just so good. His skills are outstanding, That's why the Ukrainians who speak Ukraine chose an American, to head things up. So let's take a look at how good his son really is. So let's go to the next article. Oh, revealed. Joe Biden's cocaine-using Navy busted son now working for a huge Ukraine company. Wow, surprise, surprise. Yeah, discharge from the Navy. Let's see how deep this rabbit hole goes. Within weeks of being kicked out of the Navy Reserve after testing positive for cocaine, Vice President Joe Biden's son Hunter was appointed to the board of directors of the largest non-governmental gas producer in the war-torn Ukraine. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this guy was so good that he was kicked out of the Navy. Yeah, drug charges. Oh, come on, they're just drugs. He's actually a very intelligent guy, Yeah, and his second son was discharged from the Navy Reserve in February, less than a year earlier. Oh, my word. Okay, so he's got some good sons. I must say he's got some good sons, but yeah. Now let's employ a cocaine-using guy, make him head of, major money. Yeah, so this is Newland's phone call leak. I don't know if you guys have heard it or not. Let's just see if I can play some of it.
A high-ranking official talking about diplomatic efforts in Ukraine. The last thing you want to do is drop your guard.
So that would be great, I think, to help glue this thing and have the UN help glue it. And, the EU.
What?
The UN help glue it. And, the EU.
What, the EU?
Glue it. And, the EU.
But that is exactly...
Okay. So this is the Guardian website here. Yes, this is evidence of America just interfering in countries. Meet the Americans who put together the coup in Kiev. I'm not going to go into this article, but I'm sure it'll probably lead to many other rabbit holes. It says Estonia expects new NATO units to arrive in the coming months. This is NATO encroaching on Russia's border. And it was also one of the reasons why I think Russia also took Crimea. Just had enough, Estonia expects NATO military presence in the country to increase with more alliance units arriving in the coming months. Commander-in-Chief of Estonia Defense Forces, Lieutenant, said on Wednesday. The United States alone has hundreds of military bases around the world, has been permanently occupying Germany and Japan for half a century, Afghanistan for over half a decade, and has invaded and occupied Iraq for nearly as long. The Russian aggression is a marketing gimmick. And this talks about how the Canadian president actually used it in a sentence, the Russian aggression. But yeah, if you compare the United States and how they've grown and spread throughout the world and taken over and invaded, and they have the cheek to say Russian aggression, where if you look, here's the map, there's the Soviet Union, and look how it shrunk to Russia. So here you get Russia shrinking, and on the other hand, you get America expanding. So let's just have a read. This is an Italian magazine, and it says, despite recently closing hundreds of bases in Iraq and Afghanistan, the United States still maintains nearly 800 military bases in more than 70 countries. The territories are broad from giant Little Americas to smaller radar facilities. Britain, France, and Russia, by contrast, have about 30 foreign bases combined. So America has 800, and all those other countries have 30 combined. That just shows you how America's spread out and taking over, and Russia's shrinking, and all the other countries have reasonable amounts, I guess. So by my calculation, maintaining bases and troops overseas costs 85 to 100 billion in fiscal year 2014. Okay, so I'm not going to delve into any more of that. Okay, this is now getting to worrying stuff. So now you're getting the US encroaching on Russia, causing havoc in Ukraine, and now it's launching ICBMs off California coast. This is intercontinental ballistic missiles that carry nuclear warheads, by the way. So, yeah, and if you look at this date here, it's 2016, February 2016. Okay, there's nuclear ICBM and warns we are prepared to use nuclear weapons. Sorry, did you say Russian aggression? Okay, let's ignore that then. Let's have a look at another news article. Here's Reuters. US test fires ICBMs to stress its power to Russia and North Korea. Now, North Korea. I don't know if you guys are aware that America has launched a military exercise and combined some forces with the South Korea. I think it comes to about 320,000 troops on North Korea's border. And the North Korean guy, Kim Ang-jung, said that if he smells a hint of it, he's going to nuke both South Korea and America. Now, we know he talks a lot of crap most of the time, but still, why irritate the guy? Just leave him alone, He doesn't need to be pushed over the edge. Geez, if he is pushed over the edge, can you imagine the havoc that'll break out? Anyway, moving on. So here, in response to America launching ICBMs, Russia's North Fleet submarines to launch 2 intercontinental missiles in 2016. Get a load of this. 16, this is by RT News, 16 intercontinental drills. These are missiles. Russian missile forces to double test launches in 2016. That's double the test launches. Sounds to me something fishy is going on. Things seem to be heating up. Please subscribe, and that way when I release another video, you'll be notified. What I'm really excited about is my next video is going to be how I think the Third World War will kick off. A really interesting stuff. I've got some, ideas that keep me up at night, okay, on where the first nuclear bombs will be dropped, or missiles will be dropped, and how they're going to try and contain this nuclear war, maybe keep it around the Middle Eastern area. But I don't want to spill the beans too much, because I'm going to make a whole other video on that. So yes, if you don't want to miss this one, so subscribe. Thanks and bye.